This is the Z3 cubing logo, a twisty puzzle which I handmade almost 7 years ago and which you may have seen as part of my intro animation. Believe it or not, it was actually made from the pieces of a 3x3 Rubik's Cube, which looked exactly like this. Essentially, I took it completely apart and cut down everything that stuck out to get some nice cubic building blocks, glued them all together into a shape that looked roughly like this, and then filled in all the gaps to get these nice smooth curves. After sanding everything down, painting it, and adding some stickers, it obviously turned out very well, but it was also an insane amount of work, and I would never want to make another one using this method. And that's a bit of a problem, because this original one is in pretty bad shape. As you can see, there's a massive crack starting to form between a few of the original pieces that were glued together, and that's not even to mention the fact that one time I broke it apart and intentionally dropped it on the ground for a video. But the obvious solution for an easier way to make one of these was staring me in the face even all those years ago. I got so many comments right off the bat asking me if it was 3D printed that I eventually just caved in and 3D printed one just to see what it would look like. Of course, this one I also broke in half as a joke, which I didn't really mind doing because it was so much easier to make. But other than that one advantage, this puzzle is worse than the original in every single way. For one thing, the original had screws and springs, making it a little bit flexible as it turns, while still being able to spring back into place, whereas this one is all plastic all the way through, making it just feel cheap and flimsy in comparison. And another problem is that there's no colors. I never bothered stickering it because that probably would have taken 5 times as long as this thing took to print in the first place. It just didn't really seem worth the hours of effort for something that I was ultimately so unattached to. And finally, it's not even the right shape. If you compare the original to my actual YouTube logo, you can see that it is pretty dang close. Whereas the 3D printed one, if you compare it, it's actually pretty obvious that these lines just stick out way too far. For all these years, I've always wanted to make a new 3D printed version that actually lives up to the quality of the original while not being a massive headache to make. So now that I've finally got a new 3D printer and gotten pretty deep into the world of designing and printing my own custom puzzles with colored stickers and all, I think it is finally time to revisit this original concept and make version 2 of the original Z3 logo mod. And it's not just going to be a one-to-one recreation. You may have noticed that my logo doesn't just have the Z3, it also has letters spelling out cubing down below, and I want to recreate the entire thing in physical space. So let's get started. So of course, a lot of the initial design work took place on a computer. I first dug up the ancient 3D models that I had designed to make this thing and realized how wildly inaccurate it was with all the proportions. I had pretty much just eyeballed it to make it look like my logo, whereas I want it to be exactly like my logo. So instead, I dug up the original image files of my logo so I could figure out exactly what the geometry was and then turn that into a 3D model. But I quickly noticed that that looked even more wrong. All the pieces were just way too skinny. Eventually, I realized that part of the magic of the original logo mod was that the pieces are fatter than they need to be. It's just that the skinnier white stickers on top of it make it close enough to the original logo. So in short, it was a lot more complicated than I expected, but eventually I was able to design something that I was pretty happy with and I could finally get to printing. This was one of my very first prototype pieces, the upper part of the 3. As you can see, it is a lot more complicated than just the 2-dimensional shape. The main things you'll probably notice right off the bat is that all the faces are indented a little bit, and they all have holes in them. And that's to try and solve the pesky problem of stickers. Like I mentioned before, even for a relatively simple puzzle like this, cutting out all the different sticker shapes that you need by hand can take hours. And yes, you can buy machines that will do that for you, but even then, applying them takes a good amount of time. So I wanted to make this a lot more efficient and durable by just printing out the stickers instead. Very similar to what I had done on my previous 3D printed speed cube. So basically, there's an indent and a hole on each face. You print out a sticker with a little knob on the back, and then you just slot it in there, and there you go. But the even better part is, you can print out stickers in whatever wacky shapes you want and just slap them on there. There we go. Now we have part of a 3. And even crazier, you can even print 3-dimensional stickers that curve around like this. And if you have a multicolor printer, you can even print multicolor stickers like this, so you can just slap one on and get all the colors you need all at once. I actually decided against using these multicolor prints on the final design because they're harder to print and a little bit less durable, but still pretty cool that it is an option. And the final issue that I fixed on this prototype was adding holes for screws and springs, rather than just using those flimsy plastic connectors I had used on the original 3D printed mod. So now you can get a screw and a spring just like in any other twisty puzzle. A lot of you guys pointed out in my last 3D printing video that you really don't have to stress about getting screws with a nice smooth neck like this. You can really just use a normal one with threads all the way down and it'll pretty much work fine. Stick that into the hole right here, screw it on into the rest of the puzzle, and now it's not only very rigidly attached, but it also gives you that little bit of springiness and flexibility that you'd expect in a twisty puzzle. So this was as far as I got on prototype number 1. Of course, it's not quite finished. It still needs all the rest of the colors, but I think the outline of the Z3 is looking pretty good. I learned a lot of things with this one that I was able to use to improve the next version, mostly just little dimensions and things that needed to be tweaked, but also the fact that I needed to add more holes on these long pieces to get the stickers to stay in place more steadily. And another thing is, because I have a multicolor printer, I realized that I could pretty efficiently print the white, black, and yellow colors together all at once as one piece. I'm still printing all these side stickers as different pieces because it would be wildly inefficient to try and switch between all those different colors at every single layer along the way, but at least doing it on these flat sides right here make it a little bit easier and reduce the number of parts to put together. So with all those changes made, along with a bunch of other little ones that I'm glossing over here, it was finally time to print out all 6 of our letter pieces, all 25 of our colored side pieces, and of course, grab our screws and springs, and finally put together our first full color, fully accurate, 3D printed Z3 cubing logo mod. And here we have the finished Z3 cubing logo, or as one commenter once called it, the Z by 3. This thing turns just like the original. I could go refilm my intro with it tomorrow if I wanted to. In fact, it's actually a lot more confidence inspiring to hold than the original because this always feels like it's just on the verge of breaking. This one, on the other hand, even though it is still kind of handmade in a way, I know that it's made out of very solid pieces of plastic and I am much more confident about them not falling apart spontaneously. Obviously, if you look up really close, you can see some 3D print lines and some funky textures, especially on these curved pieces around the edges. This green piece and this blue piece in particular give me the most troubles trying to print them, but I was able to eventually get it, so I was pretty happy with the result. Even despite the lines you can see in some places, I think it looks very professional and pretty much as close as you can get to a finished looking product on a 3D printer. Now obviously, like I mentioned before, we're still not quite finished. We have the Z3 part of the logo, but where's the cubing? This little stand here is also 3D printed and should give you a pretty good idea of where we're going next. It has indents that very perfectly fit the Z3 inside. But as you can see, there's slots for not just this one puzzle, but 6 more to come. So I guess now the question is, how do I turn the word cubing into 6 little puzzles? Of course, to get the proportions right, they're gonna have to be very little, which means I don't think we have enough room to do the whole black plastic with stickers thing like we did on the Z3. Instead, just like on my logo, I think that each letter should just be one solid color, so red for C, orange for U, etc. And to make sure that each one is still technically kind of a puzzle, I am gonna break them up into more or less straight line segments like I did on the Z here, probably 2 to 4 pieces per letter. And given just how small they have to be, I don't think there's going to be anywhere near enough room to add screws and springs. So unfortunately, it is going to have to go back to the janky method of just having little plastic clips to hold them together. But for a bunch of little puzzles this small that aren't really meant to be played with much compared to the main attraction right here, I think it should be more than adequate. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and design 6 little puzzles in the same style as the Z3, and then we can go ahead and print those out and then put them together. Ta-da! The cubing letter puzzles are complete, and as you can tell, they look pretty good. Let's just run through them all real quick. The C is 3 pieces in this sort of funky arrangement. So this one will spin around like this, and this one just sort of spins uselessly. Next up, the U has a pretty similar 3-piece design. The turning on these is not fantastic, but definitely not terrible either. Obviously, they are a little bit fragile, so you do have to be careful as you're turning them. This is the B, which is probably the craziest one with 4 different pieces. Well, okay, obviously not quite as crazy as the I. Look at that. And yeah, I'm really happy I went with the stickerless looking 1-piece design on all of these. I think they just look really good. And I think they also turned out a little bit more fun to play with just as puzzles than I expected. I mean, look at this. Would you expect that to spell out the word cubing? Obviously, if you know what they spell, it's not too hard to get each one back into its solved state. And as you can see, each one fits perfectly into its little slot right under the Z3 in this big black logo. And I think once we get all of these in here, it will look absolutely fantastic, having the fully completed Z3 cubing logo as just one big puzzle. Okay, I swear I set down the N backwards every single time I try. Oops. And let's get the G in here. And there we go. That is the physical Z3 cubing logo as not just one puzzle, but 7 of them. I guess you could almost consider it 8 if the whole thing is one puzzle putting it all together. And like, I'm just sitting here smiling because I was not expecting it to be this cool once the whole thing came together. It's my logo in 3 dimensions and it's a puzzle. There is even a little wall mount on the back here in case you want to hang it up, which I'm definitely going to do. And speaking of you wanting to hang it up, surprise, you can actually buy one of these right now at z3cubing.com. That's right, I will literally print out all the parts for one of these, put it together myself, and ship it to your house. It'll be identical to this one in pretty much every single way, and you can also get the letters and the stand if you want to. Obviously, it's not going to be super cheap, but I'm trying to keep the prices as reasonable as possible given just how much work goes into making each and every one of these. Let's just say it's cheaper than some flagship 3x3s. And if you want something a lot cheaper and more reasonably sized, there's also Z3 Cubing logo coasters and keychains, which now come with actual chains. And of course, there's also Rubiks Cube versions, which can come in whatever pattern you want, even a fully custom pattern, and of course, keychains of those too. By the way, everything you see right now comes with free shipping to anywhere in the US, so you could pay as little as $6 total for one of these. And there's really comfy t-shirts too, all at z3cubing.com. Okay, that's enough self-promotion for one video, but I really hope you all have enjoyed seeing my logo come to life the way that I have. Let me know what you think down in the comments, but as for me, I'm gonna go hang this thing up on my wall because I really do think it's that cool. Anyway, that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys next time.